Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Hey guys, welcome back to Fueling Your Legacy. I am on with an absolute stud father, great husband. He's been through an amazing journey in his life, and I've had the opportunity to hang out with him. We went golfing. This is like a second time he destroyed me. But what I really love about Luke is just his passion and his kindness. He's always thinking the best about you, and he's out there to help you in your corner. So I'm extremely happy that he's willing to join us today and talk more about how he's been able to learn to show up more fully in his life in the different areas and how he's building that into his legacy. And then he'll share a little bit about what he's doing and how he's sharing his passion as well. So welcome, Luke. And maybe if you could just give us a short, brief history. I know it's long. I think people just need to go visit you on social media, interact with you to hear more of your full story, because that's incredible in and of itself. And you'll get some tidbits today while we're talking to Luke, but definitely follow him on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and interact with him there, because you don't want to miss having a relationship with this man. So welcome, Luke. And then, just go ahead and give us your bio.
Awesome. Thank you. You're right. You don't want to miss anything. It's going to be so exciting. Just kidding. But yeah, so briefly, so I grew up in Glendale, California, and I was into rock and roll and started a band at a very young age. And that's all I wanted to do. That's all I dreamed about. And so that's what I did, actually. I believed in myself, and I played in bands for like 20 years. But what came along with playing in bands was a lot of drugs and alcohol, and it eventually got me into a lot of trouble. And up until about 5 years ago, that's all I did was play music, travel, and party. But I had an accident, and it really woke me up, and I wanted to change my life. And so I just had to make a bunch of changes. I quit drinking, stopped playing in bands, and removed myself from the things that were going to be a bad influence, and started doing things that would be a better influence. And a couple years ago, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs or people that are into finances or real estate have read that one. It's a classic. But that one shifted my mind, basically. And from that book, it opened the gateway into millions of other books. I'm staring at my bookshelf of like hundreds of books and hundreds more behind me. But that shifted my mindset. And shortly after I read that book, I wanted to be a real estate investor. And I was working in a property management company with my dad as like a marketing guy, sales, and it was okay. It was an okay job. But I said, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And so I made my plans, and I bought like an online course for $600, went through that for like a couple months, and then just quit my job. This was about 7 years ago, 7 years. And I spun my wheels for a really long time. Well, about 6 to 9 months, until I started gaining some traction and met a bunch of good people that I work with now. And I'm working for a company as an independent kind of consultant to help them with their real estate needs. And I've had a little bit of success doing that. And that's what I'm doing now. So that's where I'm at.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. We're going to dig into some of these smaller stories that you brought up, just because I think they're so valuable for people to understand and think about, hey, how does somebody transform their life? I think Luke's story for me is one of the biggest transformations that I've seen. Myself, a lot of people, they've kind of just like, they have these small thoughts and gradually they shift into something else. But Luke, his story is not like that. It's pretty much like a Saul, Paul type a moment. And it's not every day you're going to meet somebody with that type of moment in their life. And what I've learned in my life is every day we can have one of those moments if we're looking for it. If we're truly showing up, looking to change, every day we can have one of those moments. It won't be as maybe drastic, but it can be in specific areas of our lives. And that's where I'm why I wanted to bring and introduce Luke to you guys, because I know he can share this message with you with some personal experience and exciting stories there as well. So I'm curious, so Luke, where would you say, or what would you say has been your greatest success in life up to this point?
There's been a lot. But the one that kind of sticks out to me is I challenged myself to run a marathon in 30 days. Usually when people train for a marathon, it takes like 6 months or something. But I was feeling crazy one day, and I'd been wanting to do it for like years and years and years, and just kept like making excuses. And one day my buddy's like, why don't you just do it? I'm like, all right, that's it. I'm doing it. And I just like set a date, and I said, I'm going to go run 26.2 miles on this day. It wasn't a race. I went up to like the track or the trail by my house, ran 13.1, turned around and came back. And that was a really cool experience. It was really emotional because it was a lot of hard work that went into it, and I like collapsed while I was crying at the end. It was pretty cool. So that one was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. What would have happened if you just didn't show up on race day?
Well, the funny thing about it is my wife had like secretly invited the neighborhood to come to the finish line, which was my house. I mean, the starting line and the finish line was my house. And like, I don't know, they would have been waiting around all day, and I wouldn't have pushed myself, and I wouldn't have learned a lot of the things that I learned. I tested my body physically. I tested my mind mentally. I actually documented the whole thing with video. And so it was really cool because there was a bunch of days where it was raining, and I'm like, I don't care. I got to get up and go. It's like, I'm challenging myself to do this. I got to do that. And I mean, I would have not learned so many things that I've learned mentally, physically, spiritually. Yeah, it was insane. Actually, it was really cool.
That's awesome. And would you say that's been pretty common across a lot of things that you've accomplished, where you set a goal, you decide, hey, I'm going to do this. And then there's all along the way to accomplish that, there's all the reasons why you shouldn't actually accomplish that, or what's holding you back from accomplishing that, all the things that are popping up in our family lives, in our business life, whatever it is. There's all these warning signs or slowdown signs or whatever that we can choose to accept as like caution, don't do it. Or we can say, hey, look, that's an obstacle. That's an exciting thing. Let's go see if we can conquer it.
Yeah. So that marathon experience plus multiple other experiences I've had in my life, it led me to this belief, which is exactly what you said. When obstacles come up, most people just give up, but that's when you got to like push through and really like test yourself and your will and your strength. And it's exactly that. It's an opportunity to grow. If we just like every time we ran into like a speed bump stopped, we would never learn and grow. And the purpose of life is to become better, to learn and to grow. And to be honest, my mentality or mindset of having that is why I've been as successful as I have. Like, I don't like to brag. I'm a pretty humble guy, but like, a lot of my major accomplishments have come from that type of mentality. It's like, well, here's a challenge. And I could go on and on and on about the stories, but I don't want to like.
Right. I'm curious about, Luke, like, have you always had that mentality, or is that mentality something that you've kind of learned a lot more of since you started reading, right? Since you started your not Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? I've read that book. It's a fantastic book, not just for business or real estate, although that's kind of where it's centered. What I think is most important is the idea of creating streamlined things in our lives to remove the stress. Life can get really stressful if every day we feel is so different from the one before that we have no consistency. I think that's what leads to a lot of depression, anxiety, lack of control. And so then we fall into negative habits to decide we have control of something. And one of the books that helped me with that is the Cash Flow Quadrant, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where it's talking about streamlining things. But how often have you seen that those, when do you feel like you got that first inkling that was your mindset, that it's an obstacle to overcome rather than something to slow you down?
Oh yeah, probably somewhere in my journey of reading. I mean, it started with Rich Dad, and then it went to 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and then it was probably somewhere right around there, Think and Grow Rich. But somewhere between there and all the books I've read since, it's like when I talk to people about these kind of things that you have to overcome and do. It's baby steps, right? You don't just like wake up one day and you become a better person. It's like you've taken the step to start reading on a daily habit, or exercising a daily habit, or spending time with your family. And these little things that you do add up to this mindset. And the mindset I have now is an accumulation of all the books I've read. So man, I couldn't pinpoint like one exact spot for that specific mindset, but yeah, man, I mean, it's just these little steps that you take that eventually compound into this amazing, well, I think, mindset shift, right? You know, and obviously I had the motorcycle accident, and that really woke me up. And the first thing I realized is that I needed clarity in my life. I was just kind of floating around in life, right? And if you don't know where you're going to go, and you're not clear on what you want to do, like, you are just going to coast through life and not much is going to happen, right? So that was
right. Yeah, I love in your message, you say it as clarity. In mine, I say, you know, you have to identify your identity. You have to be clear about who you are and who you want to become. But if you were talking to somebody who kind of is still stuck in the mindset pattern, largely just because that's how we're trained. It's not like good or bad. I'm not here to condemn anybody, but we all were there at some point. But if you're coaching somebody, you're having a one-on-one kneecap to kneecap conversation with them, and you're saying, hey, look, I've been where you are. I've had these mindsets that it's a speed bump. It's meant to slow me down, and I should slow down. But there's a greater light. What would you be saying to that individual?
Yeah, so it's really kind of what we've been talking about, and I do talk to people about this all the time. When I talk about mindset, I usually talk about having gratitude. Because that just psychologically like shifts your perspective on life, remaining positive and believing in yourself. But what I like to really, as a big picture to answer your question, is that it's a process, right? And like so many people, especially in this day and age, is like want instant gratification, right? I mean, I can't remember who told me this, but somebody said that like our attention span is less than like 0.03 seconds these days, and which is less than a goldfish. So it's just like, you know, this day and age, people expect something instantly, where success or growth in life is actually a process, man. And there's nothing sexy or fancy about it. That's the truth of the matter, you know? And that's how I tell people. I'm like, dude, it's a process. From when I had my accident to where I am now, I mean, dude, I didn't wake up or a week later going through all the things that I've done, become this person that I am now. It's taken 7 years, you know what I mean? So, which is hard for people to hear, but like, I just tell it like it is, man. You know, I don't know.
Right. No, I completely agree. It's something that, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's a process. The biggest thing is, and it goes back to gratitude for me, creating daily habits of gratitude. Just if you can start to shift your mind into thinking 3 or 4 things I'm grateful for in the morning, 3 or 4 things I'm grateful for in the evening, and you're constantly thinking about, okay, what was I grateful for? What happened that was good? Another thing that I've found very helpful is when you're praying, only pray in prayers of gratitude. So if you're going to say a statement of, I would like this, or please help us that this would happen, or please bless this person, whatever, rather than asking, just express gratitude that it's already come to pass. And when we start to reframe our mind into expressing gratitude that it's already come to pass, then it becomes habitual to where we start seeing these things as learning experiences that we're grateful for, rather than as a warning sign that we should slow down and maybe go a different direction.
Totally. Yeah. So with gratitude, particularly, I just learned that recently within the last year or two, and I'd never heard that, but somebody said something like, be grateful for the things that are going to come. I was like, oh, that's really cool, actually, because usually it's like, oh, I'm grateful for the things I have right now. But if you start being grateful for the things that you want or that you believe are going to come, then it helps shift your perspective a lot. And I think it helps you realize the things you want, to be honest. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So it definitely has changed my whole life and the way I view things. And it's like everybody I should say everybody, I can speak for myself. At some times I've gotten angry. I've gotten upset in my past. And that happened a lot in my childhood. It happened a lot up until probably I was 16 or 17 years old when I learned about gratitude, and learning to shift that, just like that one little shift in mindset. You can ask my wife, you can ask pretty much anybody who knows me. I don't really get upset anymore. angry. I don't yell. That doesn't really happen. Do I get annoyed? I still get annoyed occasionally for a few minutes until I click back into gratitude. But it's because I know my identity is a grateful person and somebody who looks at things as an opportunity to grow. Then I think the longest I've gone since I was 17 of being upset, you could say, was about a week. And that was about 2 years ago. Some really crazy things happened. I went about a week pretty upset, and I started saying some not great things about other people. I'm not going to name names, but it didn't work very well. But I soon it clicked. I was like, man, this vial that's coming out of my face, that is not who I am. That is not who I identify with. And once I recognized that, I went to the person. I said, hey, look, I've said a bunch of nasty things behind your back. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It's my bad. Hopefully you can learn to forgive me. And I was able to shift back into gratitude and really learn to express myself better. So it's pretty interesting learning that. But I think part of that comes from having a belief in yourself and knowing who you are. And so I'm curious, tell us the story of when you first felt that somebody else believed in you.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this actually, and I had great parents. I was born and raised with good parents, a good house, but I just kind of went wayward for a long time. And it's funny because the person that I think believed in me the most was myself. And I know that's crazy to say, but I have such a strong belief in myself that I've been able to accomplish almost anything that I want, to be honest. And I probably believe to a fault sometimes that I can do really whatever I want. But yeah, no, man, I don't know. Ever since I've kind of been on my journey of growing and learning, I've just had this belief that I can do anything. And it started with reading that book. And then I just said, well, I can do this, right? I can be a real estate investor. And I just quit. And everybody thought I was crazy. I mean, I had friends that were real estate investors and they're like, dude, you can't do that, man. You can't just quit a job and go do that. I'm like, well, I'm doing it, man. So yeah, I mean, seriously, my dad told me I was crazy. A really high profile investor that I know was like, dude, don't do that. Just get a job and then go do this. I'm like, well, I'm going to do it, man. So I don't know, man. I just believe in myself. I know that's crazy. And it's not in an arrogant way. It's just that I really have that belief, right? And the thing about it is I think everybody has that, but they don't identify with it yet or haven't realized it yet. And that's where internally we all have this greatness, right? But for some reason in our society especially, we don't identify with it, or we haven't found it, or we're too worried about what other people think about us. But we all have that greatness within us, right? And it's different than everybody else's. But if we can tap into that, into our soul, and I think it's the clarity, you call it identify with your identity, right? Then that helps us believe in ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, it comes down to the question of who are we showing up for, right? If we're going to talk about showing up, who are we showing up for? Are we showing up for the sake of others just to be seen? Or are we showing up for ourselves? Are we showing up in our mind, in our heart, in our spirit, really showing up to be present to make sure that we're actually getting to what we want to accomplish? And so I want you to dive a little bit deeper into your history. Sure. And you can decide how much you want to share, but I want to hear that transformation of what happened and how that impacted the way you showed up in your family, in your faith, in your fitness, in your health. How did that impact that? Oh,
man. Okay. So I don't know where to start, but, I basically said that, I was partying for a really long time. I mean, I drank myself to sleep every night. And sometimes if I was out with friends, it would get out of control and I would black out. And before I blacked out, do some really stupid things that, I regretted and I had to come clean with at some point. But I had I crashed my motorcycle when I was drunk, and I don't know if I fell asleep behind the wheel or if I just blacked out or what. But I woke up and kind of looked around and had no idea what the hell just happened. And these kids were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "What the?" And I got up, and thank God that I had a scratch on my ankle, and that was it. I don't know how that happened, other than I must have had angels, or it's not my time, or that was the time in my life that I needed to experience to make the shift that I made, because I don't know how I didn't get hurt. But I walked home that day and I was just so grateful. I mean, I was still intoxicated, but like, man, you know, those times when you get like really shaken up, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so crazy. Like, you know, like if you see like a wreck happen on the freeway, or something crazy, right? And that's how I was feeling, like, you know, your body's tingling. And I was just grateful to be alive. I was grateful that I didn't hurt anybody. I was grateful that I didn't get hurt. I was grateful I could come home to my wife and kids. I had 3 kids at that time. And what I realized from that moment is I was not showing up. Up to that point in my life, especially when I started having kids, I would be that dad who was hungover on Saturday morning, sleeping on the couch. And they're like, Daddy, let's play. I'm like, I don't even, you know, like having a massive headache. And I wasn't showing up for them. I wasn't giving my wife the best me. But what it really all came down to was I wasn't showing up for myself. Like, I mean, I was 35 years old and had lived a lot, but what did I have to show for it? You know what I mean? And so that's when I started thinking to myself, I need to show up for me, right? And I had no place to go. I mean, I have a supportive family. My wife was forgiving, thankfully. You know, it took some time for her to forgive me. But when I say I had no place to go, like, and people might relate to this that are in a really bad spot in their life, it's like I had nowhere else to go but to look up. And you know, it humbled me and put me on my knees, basically. And I decided at that point that I needed to create a relationship with God, or recreate it. You know, I was born in a religious family and went to church for a long time when I was a kid. But when I was 15, between the ages of 15 to 35, I didn't. And I just did whatever I wanted. So that really helped me. And when I explain my story and try to talk to people about that, I don't like to get all religious on people because I know everybody believes in their own thing and I like to respect that. But the message or the point of the story is that you need to find help with somebody. Okay. For me, it was God. And that just made everything kind of go better. And the other part I like to tell is that doesn't mean it's easy. You know what I mean? I had to go through a lot of hell for the next, year. Like, I felt like I had abandoned my friends and I didn't know who I was anymore because I identified who I was with what I did, you know? And I know now that that's what I was doing. And so, like, when you do something for so long and then just completely leave it, you're like, well, who am I? Like, what do I do? I don't know how to function. I thought that I had like a social disorder where I couldn't talk to people unless I was buzzed or drunk. So it was just a completely weird experience, but I went back to church. And just, it's been an amazing experience ever since. Again, it wasn't easy. But now I'm able to not be hungover on Saturday mornings. You know, I make my family a priority before I make anything else a priority, meaning my business or myself. And so I put dates in the calendar where I get to go out with my kids, where I get to go out with my wife. And the accumulative effect of giving my family the priority that they need and deserve, as well as giving myself, you know, I like to think that I take care of my mind, my body, and my spirit, right? So if somebody's got a healthy body but not a healthy spirit, like, you're not kind of in conjunction, right? You got to have all three, in my opinion, to be your best self, to be able to give your best self to your others. And for me, you know, I want to show up for me. I want to be my best self so that I can give my family my best self, right? And anything you do, right? Whether that's your job or your work. And I'm not a super competitive person. And I know people that are like super competitive, they're like, I just want to win, whatever. And like, that's not me, but I want to be my best self for me. So like, a lot of people are trying to compete against like business competitors or other people. I just compete against me. As long as I know I'm my best self, like, I'm content and I'm cool. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but I did kind of dive into the story there a little bit.
No, that was fantastic. I want to dig into two things I've never thought to ask you before, but you're on live, so you're just gonna have to answer it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't want you to put words or thoughts into your wife's mouth, but I am curious. Yeah. Going through this transformation, because something I've seen in the personal development space with people I've worked with, when I've helped like one member of a relationship make a transformation. Mm-hmm. But the other member of the relationship wasn't there. They didn't experience transformation. They didn't experience that, right? Your wife, she, from my understanding of the story thus far, she wasn't there when you crashed your motorcycle. She wasn't there when you got stupid drunk. She wasn't there when like all this stuff happened. So that transformation, although that happened for you, like in an instant, like when that realization came to it, when you had to get your act together, to one degree or another, she had my assumption is, okay, that she's already created expectations of you. She's already learned to live with you a certain way. And then when you come in and you decide to just start showing up a different way, that can not just put you out of an identity, but it can mess up the identity of the whole, we'll say it, family system, ecosystem, business system around you. How did she handle that? Like, without putting words in her mouth, but like, how did she go about recovering from somebody else in her life, making a transformation?
Well, first off, it was a positive change. So that helps, okay? Like, in all honesty, right? But those things that you just asked me are the things that go through my head, man. I'm like, I knew that. So, and you also said this was my transformation, right? So like, this was all me. And I'm like, okay, I have to do this in my life no matter what. And so as soon as I told that to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is she going to do? Is she going to want to come with me? Is she not? You know what I mean? Because totally, like, it messed up her identity as well. Right. You know, I just had to do it. I just had to do it. And I said, here's, I'm coming clean. Here's what I'm doing. I understand if you don't want to come with me on this journey. I appreciate that, but I love you and I wish you would. And again, it really helped that it was a positive change, right? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, you're going to be better now? No, I'm out of here, right? Yeah, in all honesty, it really helps. But, you know, with the relationship with God and religion, you know, that was even weirder because, like, we were both inactive members of the, you know, LDS faith for most of our life. And I said, I'm going back to church, you know, and I understand if you don't want to go. But, like, this is something I need to do in my life. So, like, if you don't want to, I get it, you know? And that was one of the hardest things in the world, man. That's one of the hard things, you know. I've expressed how hard it was, and I keep kind of brushing it under the carpet. But, like, there was so many hard things with this, my identity, her identity, and it didn't make it any easier. And I just prayed a lot, man, during those first couple of weeks, you know, and it worked out, thankfully. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, if it wouldn't have, it wouldn't have. And I'm a big believer that things happen for a reason. And, you know, if it didn't, it didn't, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree that things happen for a reason. And my whole life, I just choose that everything happens for me and nothing happens to Sam anymore. Everything happens for me. But I think that's one of the things that I had to learn early on when I was learning that journey is exactly what you said is, okay, I've decided that this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. And up to this point, I've been somebody else different at showing up for other people. And you kind of have to give them the option. You have to be honest and upfront with them, but you have to give them the option and say, look, out of love and respect for you, I get it if you don't want to come with me. And that, I think, is hard. And so for our listeners, that could be with your children. That could be with your spouse. That could be with your business partners. It could be with a lot of things that they may come to you one day and say, look, this is how I feel and I'm doing it. And sorry, right? It's not out of malintent. And likewise, if you feel that way, staying in an existence that's contrary to your identity is, in my opinion, the worst form of hell. Like knowing that you should be or be doing something different and then remaining to act one way just because that's how you think other people want you to show up. That's hell, in my opinion, to the ever-ending damnation, burning, brimstone, you know, like having to live a split identity is too stressful in life.
Yep.
And so being respectful of that's an important thing to recognize, that when we go to these and we have these conversations, how are we coming forward with it? Are we coming forward with it like, hey, I love you from a position of love, or hey, I'm going to do this and I don't care about what you want to do? And I think that's a huge way that I think initially you said, hey, I wasn't showing up at all. And then you were able to start showing up. And part of that showing up is recognizing, wow, I really love these people. They care about me. I could have been gone. What would have happened if something happened? And then you're able to go forward with a deep feeling of love. And sometimes it is reality. Sometimes people don't come around. Some people, they choose to split ways with you, and that's okay. I actually wrote a book. It's called the 9 Pillars of Building a Legacy, Building a Meaningful Legacy. But the first section, the first 2 sections is, one, you have to do it for your haters, and the second is you have to do it for your supporters, right? And you have to do it out of love. It's not to like do it because of your haters or in spite of your haters to go and prove something to them. You have to do it for your haters. Those people who are doubting you, those people, as you mentioned, when you said you were going to just jump into real estate, those people who are doubting you, it's not because they don't love you. It's because they do love you. The reason they're telling you not to go for your goals and your dreams is because they love you and they think that you're going to hurt yourself. Yeah. And so you need, and what's worse about that thought process is that they think that if they were to go do that, they would get hurt. And so why it's so important to be successful and build a meaningful legacy is because you're going to be an example and you're going to give other people the faith and the hope and the belief that they too can follow their dream, that they can also step out on a limb. And that's why I wanted to bring Luke on today, because I just know that those of you guys listening who are dealing with this internal struggle of like, how do I know how I want to show up for my family. I know how I want to show up for my business partners. I know how I want to show up for my church or whatever, but I have these expectations that I've lived in. I've created this building for myself. How do I shift that? Right. And how do I be okay with the consequences? And that's why I think your perspective, Luke, is so crucial to showing up, because you went through all that and you know what that's like, and you're able to share that from a real place inside of you. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Let me just say one thing about everything that you said. What I've realized in only the past few years is that we have these voices inside of our head, right? That's our mind talking, but we have this other part of our body called our heart. And that speaks louder sometimes, I think, but we shut that out because we're so used to hearing, well, what about this? What about this? And, we're always chatting, talking to ourselves. But what I've really realized is like, you need to do what you're passionate about, what you love. And like, your heart can never lie to you, right? I think our minds lie to us sometimes, like, oh, what are they going to think? Or, oh, why would you do this? Or whatever those things are. I think we lie to ourselves in our head, but our heart will never lie to us. So it's like, learn to listen to what your heart says, right? And you'll know, because you'll feel it and you'll know it's like, oh, well, this is what I should do. And it's funny because in my book, I had those thoughts in my head for 20 years. I'm like, oh man, I really should quit doing this. Oh man, I really should quit doing this. And that's the story of the book. It's so funny. But then not until like something drastic happened did I like recognize that. I'm like, oh, why didn't I listen to my heart talking to me for the last 20 years, right? But yeah, anyway, so follow your heart, I think, is what you need to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want you to speak to one other point there, and that is after you made the change, right? Yeah. You spoke of how you had to kind of get rid of some friends because they were inconsistent, and you had built your identity off of kind of the things you do. And I see that a lot with a lot of the mothers that I work with, a lot of the career men. They built their identity off of what they do for work. They built their identity off of being a mother and raising children. They built their identity off of these little things around them, and they've really lost sight of who they are. And then once those things are no longer important, once all the kids are out of the house, once these things happen, they don't even know who they are, and they go through this midlife crisis literally because they're just like, whoa, where am I? Who am I? And so how did you go about regaining a sense of bearing and identifying, okay, well, who am I then? Now that I've shelled off all these things that were the things that I did, who is Luke? Like, who is Luke really?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of trial and error, man. But really, it's a process of elimination, right? And in everything I do, it's like, okay, especially during that process of my own self-analysis, right? And asking myself that question, who am I? It's like, okay, like I'm not doing these things anymore because they're going to hurt my body and I've messed up in that form. So like I eliminated all the bad things and then just tried to figure it out, And I've had that trouble myself personally and dealt with it recently where it's like, man, I just work and work, but like, what do I like doing, right? So that's one of the questions, and I help people try to identify this that are actually going through midlife crisis, is like, you forget what you like doing. Like, what are your hobbies? Like, what did you like doing when you were a kid? Why don't you do that anymore, right? And so for me, it's playing the guitar. Like, I didn't play the guitar forever because I was busy working, right? Or being a family man. It's like, well, I forgot to give myself time. And actually one of the other things that I started doing was golfing, right? And so like I went golfing with you and it was so much fun. I'm like, dude, this is fun. Like, I think just recognizing and realizing that making sure you give yourself some time is huge. And we don't do that enough, right? Because like you said, we identify ourselves with our job or our family or who we are. But I think that internally people know what they like and what they don't like. And I always just tell people, what, this seems so logical, but like, why don't you do more of what you like and less of what you don't? It's really that simple, right? I mean, and if you want to get good at something, like for me, like I haven't played the guitar forever, so I'm rusty. So I'm like, oh, I need to learn these songs or practice my fingers. So like literally I'll sit here in my office and throughout the day, I'm like, okay, I'm taking 5 minutes. I'm just going to jam for 5 minutes, right? And I'll do that like 3 or 4 times during the day. It's like, that fulfills me, right? And if you don't do what like fulfills you and makes you happy, like, again, it seems logical, but you're not going to be happy. You know what I mean? Like in the long run, it's like these little small deposits that you give yourself to be able to have a big return in the end. And that has a lot to do with investing, right? But also it has to do with your family and your kids and your wife or your spouse or anybody need these little emotional paychecks, right? Just the simplest things, man. Where, sometimes our kids are just bugging us. Yours are still young, so you don't know yet, but I'm joking. But like, it's like, just give them a smile. Just listen to them. Just talk to them for 2 seconds. Sometimes we're so busy in our work and we've got a million things. It's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. I'll talk to you later. Right? It's like, wait a minute. Why don't I just give you 2 minutes right now? You know what I mean? And that stuff is going to return and be a payoff in the future. And that's building a relationship. And that's how you build relationships with your family. That's how you build relationships at work, with people in society. It's something that is lacking, I think. Communication is probably the core of it. But people crave, if you've read How to Win Friends and Influence people crave attention. They love it. You know what I mean? If you ever talk to somebody and notice that they'll just start talking about themselves, if you just listen to them and don't say a word, they're like, that guy was cool. Because you just listen to them, right? Seriously, try it. I've done that a lot. And like, I don't put a word in and they don't know anything about me, but I just sat there and listened like, hey, you're all right, man. Yeah, what's up? I'm like, yeah, I just listened to you, man. You know what I mean? So anyway, trying to talk a little bit about legacy. Legacy, leaving a legacy is not just like what kind of financial legacy are you leaving, but also the relationship, right? Because, there's numerous stories of people that are filthy rich, but like they're lonely and they're going to die. And that was nice that they made a lot of money, but they had no relationships, right? Or their family hates them because they were too busy working, right? Or that dad who's never home because he's too busy working and didn't give his kids what they need, right? So, and you got to find that balance, and it's tough, but that's life. Everything's tough.
Sure. And I loved one phrase you said, and I will start using it after I give you credit twice, right? No, but emotional paychecks. That is such a cool word. I don't know if you've ever used that before, if that's a new thing you just said on the fly, but like sometimes we can talk too specific into specific types of relationships or too specific into specific things. I like phrases that are general, not because I don't want to be specific, but when we talk about phrases that are general, it's more because they're principles that are general. An emotional paycheck, if you are just offering a financial paycheck or a monetary paycheck rather than an emotional paycheck, you're going to be emotionally bankrupt. And you can't be emotionally bankrupt if you're looking to have a legacy. Even like the biggest companies you can think of, Apple, Microsoft, Berkshire Hathaway, and these companies that are ran by the wealthiest people in the marketing, their marketing teams, they aren't just like putting forth the best product. They have to create a product and market it emotionally. They have to do it emotionally. And so you have to be doing those emotional paychecks and building that relationship with clients, with your children, with your spouse, with your business partners, with every relationship that you're ever in. You have to be willing to give emotional paychecks. And I love that phrase. I've never heard it before. So I just like the sound of it.
I think it came from a book called How Full Is Your Bucket? Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it. I haven't never read it though.
And then then I think there's one for kids. It's like a kid's book that says How Full Is Your Bucket. But anyway, I think that's where it came from. I could be completely wrong.
I'll have to read that book then.
Yeah.
Your bucket. Cool. So that's incredible. But let's get into your passion, because one is your passion, the other is how you monetize it. But I love tell people how to get a hold of you, one. But also then go into your passion and really what you're doing and what you're transitioning into. Yes, you do real estate right now, but what are you moving into?
Sure. Yeah. So real estate's my job, pays the bills and, provides for my family. It's been a wonderful career. But I realized it's not my passion. And I just found my passion after I had the accident, and I just started changing my life. And then the thought came to me, I need to share my story. And I didn't know what that meant. And so I just started writing, and then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to write a book. And so I wrote a book about the story. And then after that, I had this thought, oh, well, maybe I should be a motivational speaker. And I just kept thinking that like somebody could benefit from my story of transformation. And then after I decided I wanted to write a book and become a motivational speaker, then I'm like, I want to coach people and help people do the same. So I'm transitioning into that, and really want to help people do. I have a couple different things that I really want to do, but I want to help people have a better family life. I want them to find more fulfillment. I want them to have better finances. And I want to help people that are in like the phase of crisis, right? A lot of people that you mentioned earlier might be going through a midlife crisis. I relate what happened to me kind of like that. And it's almost like you just have to stop and figure it out and like go through some processes and like be like, okay, what the hell is going on here? And that's exactly what I did. So I want to help people that are going through something similar. It might not be a drunken motorcycle accident, but somebody where like there's something happened in their life and they're in a crisis. And I want to help those people get out of it. I want to help them have a better family life. And then I want to help entrepreneurs do better in their businesses. I've had, a little bit of business experience over the last 10 years. But I want to help entrepreneurs make sure that they take care of their family too. So I want to help people, entrepreneurs, dads specifically, who are sometimes just get so freaking busy. And a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening might relate to this, that you just put your head down and go, right? And like, that's just in our minds. It's just like work. And we're creative and we're always thinking. And sometimes we need to like shut that off and be like, oh my gosh, my family's right here, right? Oh, I forgot about that. And so finding that balance, right? And it's, through a bunch of processes, again, that I've identified, which is, prioritizing them, figuring out what's important. And it's a balancing act, right? It's not like you're always going to have this perfect balance, but it's being able to identify when you need to recalibrate the scale, right? A lot of times I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm working too much. And my kids are like screaming at me. It's like, oh crap. All right. Balancing time. I gotta stop work and give the family what they need. But make sure that entrepreneurs are successful too, right? With the experience that I have in business. So that was a little too long-winded, but I'm coaching dads. I'm coaching people find more success.
Yeah, and success in all areas of their life, not just financial success. But when it comes to building a legacy, I think you mentioned it earlier, but it's not just about the finances. Sometimes we think of compounding effects. We think of compounding interest. We think of these things too much in terms of money. And a great coach of ours is Travis Brady. And he says, take the word money out of your vocabulary and replace it with value. And again, one of the reasons I love that is because value then applies to everything. Money is such a specific thing. But when we're talking about value now, your legacy should be a legacy of value, a meaningful legacy of value. And that value needs to be added in all areas. You can't just add value in one area and have it accomplish everywhere. It's a funny thing. You hear this a lot in a religious context, but it's getting more wide, but that is being equally yoked, right? You've heard that where the analogy of two animals pulling a cart or something, and they have the yoke that's equally on both of them. And for a long time, probably most of my childhood, adulthood, up until I was probably 21, I think I was 21. That's how I viewed it. I viewed it as equally yoked as you're pulling beside somebody. And I had a friend who explained it to me differently. And I love this new definition. That's one type of yoke where you're both pulling. The other type of yoke is a bar across your shoulders and like that holds buckets, right? That's a one-man yoke. But can you, like, if you've ever tried to carry a heavy thing that's off weight, it's heavier on one side than the other, it's really, really difficult. And if you're walking around trying to carry a ton of weight on one side of you and you're not really carrying anything on the other side, then you're unequally yoked and it's miserable. That's hell. Like, that's another form of hell, where from a religious context, they say, take Christ's yoke upon you. It's not that we're pulling with Christ now. It's that his yoke is perfectly balanced. Ours is out of balance. And so when we trade yokes in this analogy, whatever your religious affiliation is, when you trade yokes from a perfectly balanced one and you give yours over to somebody else who can balance it out for you before they hand it back, that's a benefit. And so I love that that's what you're doing for dads, is you're teaching people how to balance their yoke, how to really rearrange things to where they're balanced, and it's not this crazy screwing up your back or screwing up these different areas of your life. It's balance.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great analogy. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad too. Hey, it's something that's really needed, to be honest. I mean, I think we just kind of go through life sometimes for years on end, and then one day we stop and we're like, what happened, right? Like, I didn't do anything I was supposed to. And that's what happened to me. So like, I can relate to that, and I can relate to people that are going through similar circumstances. So that's why I feel like I can help.
That's awesome. So what would you say, I mean, in this scenario, then what would you say is really holding you back, either holding you back from the next level? Some people don't want to admit what's holding them back, and they're like, nothing's holding me back. I just got to do it. Okay. That's exactly the point. What's holding you back from just doing it? And if you really are past that, then what would you say your next steps are?
Yeah, no, I love that question. And a lot of people don't want to say it because it's like, ooh, I'm scared, right? Well, of course there's some fear, right? And nobody's perfect. But like for me, honestly, so I've gone through something similar in my life. So when I quit my job working with my dad at the property management company, it was one of the scariest things I did. But I had no rent and 1.5 kids at the time. And it was a lot easier to take that risk. This time I want to transition into what I'm doing, but I'm doing it strategically. So I've been working on my coaching programs, my speaking, my book for the last 2 years, right? So I'm just what people call in real estate kind of taking a calculated risk this time around. And it's still scary and I'm still fearful, but I'm actually going to be making the take the next level here pretty soon. So probably a year or shortly thereafter. Yeah, it's still scary as hell, man. I gotta be honest. But like I said, I believe in myself. Like I know I can accomplish anything. And the one thing that I have learned recently, and as I look back at when I quit my job the first time too, is like, I know that if I just focus on one thing, you can be really good at it, right? But trying to do like a couple different things or 20 different things, a lot of time in the entrepreneur world, it's called like the shiny object syndrome. You can't do it all, right? And that's where like the power of leverage comes in and helping other people. And that might work into your analogy of the yoke and the balancing of the thing, right? It's like leverage what you can do and what other people can do. So it's awesome. Yeah, I don't know if that's holding me back or I'm being held back, but I'm definitely taking a more strategic approach this time. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Honestly, in a lot of scenarios, it's important to take strategy. There's faith and there's moving forward in faith. And then there's not being dumb, right?
Exactly.
And you have to balance the two, and you have to let fear get out of your way. If there's ever been somebody to do it, then you can do it too. So you can't let the fear of inaction, of moving forward, cause inaction. But exactly to your point, too many people are maybe acting too much, and they don't stick to one thing. Thomas Edison, when somebody asked him how he was so successful in life, right? And he said, you know what? Most people, they wake up and they focus on a lot of things. When I wake up, I focus on a few things, right? And it's exactly what you just said. We just got to focus on a few things and be successful that way. So that when we're strategically moving in, then that's really helpful. And what would you say the top 2 books are that have helped you? Obviously, you've mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a transformative book in your life. But do you have other books that you feel like would be the top of your list right now?
Oh my gosh. Like right now? Okay. So right now, one that's really helped me has been, oh my gosh, I think it's called Expert Secrets from Russell Brunson. He's a online marketer, genius. But just the strategies that he talks about marketing can be applied in any business. Amazing book. If you haven't read that one, you've got to pick that one up. And then one of the other ones is from Brendon Burchard, who's an online marketer, coach, speaker as well. And he came out with a new one called High Performance Habits, which is amazing. And he basically did this study, he said, for the last 10 to 20 years of coaching high performers and tried to find the similarities of what they had and what habits they had. And he boiled it down to 6. And it's an amazing book. If you haven't read that one either, brand new. Well, it's new as in within a year. So, and Expert Secrets is a couple years old now. So those 2 are pretty awesome. The Bible is pretty good.
Bible. Amen. Amen. No, that's awesome. Both of those are good. I have read Expert Secrets, but not the Expert Secrets, man. That was a mumble if I ever had one. But not the High Performance Habits yet. I have not read it. It's on my Audible. I just need to do it.
Yeah.
I have too many books on my Audible to get through all of them quickly, because I fell into a habit of just like reading a book a week, and it's good, kind of, but sometimes you just got to slow down and actually apply what you're learning. If you're just constant input and you're never applying anything, then it's basically as if you didn't hear it.
Yeah. So let me just drop one more. This one's called, what does that say?
The Millionaire Success Habits.
Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi. And I don't know why, but he kind of bugs me. He seems super hyper in his marketing stuff, but I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it. It was free with shipping and handling. And the only reason I wanted to share that is because that's exactly what I'm doing on this book, is because I do the same thing. I just read it, but never take action. So like this book, I'm like almost done reading it. I've highlighted the crap out of it. And then I'm going to go back and be like, okay, what are the principles? And I'm going to like make a summary of the book in my own terms and then apply it in my life.
Yeah. That's a good habit for anybody who reads on a regular business. That's actually one of the reasons why I started doing book reviews on my podcast, is because I recognize that I've read a ton of books. I don't know where a lot, just like you said, my growth from 7 years ago to today is in thousands of books, right? It's the same way. And it's like, man, I got to learn what I learned from each of these books and put it in a documented fashion. So now my documented fashion is my podcast. I love it. I can go back and listen and like, hey, what were the 5 or 6 things that really stuck out to me when I listened to this book? What transformations did I go through when I listened to this book? And just shared it, because everybody needs some uplifting, and so it helps if they want to, instead of reading a 4-hour or plus long book, they can just get a shorter book and they get it.
That's a great way to do it.
That was my brainchild on the way to creating my book reviews. Was like, I need a way to share this and keep myself accountable to actually learning and applying something out of a book rather than just like going through it. So I've actually had to go back and reread some of the books that I've recommended. Just I'm like, okay, what did I get out of this and what am I going to apply in my life? So no, that's really awesome. Share with people how to connect with you. What are you on Instagram? Yes. Where are you at on Facebook?
Okay. So Facebook is just Luke Watkins. I also do have a page on Facebook called the Gratitude Video Journal page, and it was one of the first video projects that I did. I just felt inspired to share gratitude on a video, and so I post there every once in a while. On Instagram, I am Rockstar_Dadpreneur, and that's where I do most of my stuff. But I do have a Facebook group as well called Rockstar Dadpreneurs, so you can find me anywhere really. You can call me at 801-842-4948 or email me at luke.watkins9@gmail.com.
Okay. And where do they get your book?
So lukewatkins.com.
Okay. And then get his book. Honestly, you have just barely scratched the surface of your story. So anybody listening to this, you do need to get in contact with him, or at the very least, go get his book. I don't know how much it costs, but it's not too expensive. But it's a transformative story, right? And what's cooler about it is you are going to recognize situations in your life that you can relate to, and through watching his transformation, it'll help you guys make the transformation you need as well. And that's really I think that's the pinnacle of anything, right? Are we actually internalizing what we're seeing, and are we letting it get into our soul, get into our heart, and actually change us into a way or into a person that's going to be better than we were the one yesterday. And so that's awesome. Also, I think it's Hospital Food, right?
Sorry, I just started laughing. Yeah, I was in a band called Hospital Food. It's on iTunes. There's 2 Hospital Foods, and the one that's Hospital Food in the album's called Medicate. That's me screaming. I didn't call it singing, but I called it screaming in tune. I tried really hard. It's
actually pretty decent for the era of music.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's not today's era.
It's like punk rock from the late 90s, early 2000s.
So if you're into that type of music, it's definitely worth checking out because it's actually not bad.
You listen to it?
I did. I went through and listened to it.
Nice.
It's not bad. It's actually pretty good music. So, but Luke is just an extremely accomplished person, and the transformation he was, even while he was going through all of his crappy not necessarily childhood, but crappy life in between 15 and 35, he still accomplished some incredible things that probably 99% of the world are never going to accomplish, right? So even with all of the negative things in his life, all the things that were holding him back, he was still able to accomplish a lot. And I think that sometimes, I know for myself, I went through a period of crappy childhood and I chose to blank out a lot of it. And I had to go back to therapy and like go back and try and remember everything and pick out the good things from those experiences. And so often we write off whole portions of our life like, oh, that was a bad time in my life. Not the whole time was bad. There were some good things that you learned. There were some good things that came out of that. And it's important to go back and recognize what was learned from those experiences. And Luke is a great person to model it and follow to get that advice from. And his coaching is awesome. I've been able to coach with him and around him. And he definitely is making moves for dads. I'm assuming women are okay to.
Yeah, I've coached a few women. Yeah. And yeah, it's been amazing. Yeah. I mean, moms can relate too, really. You know what I mean? People with kids is really what I'm focused on, but I'm a dad, so I kind of connect with dads, you know?
Yeah. And that's perfectly understandable. So the last question I want to ask you then is, he's excited for this one. Now you're dead. Okay. Your great-grandchildren, okay, because it can't be people who remembered you. Your great-grandchildren are now talking about you, and they're telling their friends about who you were and what your legacy was. What do you want them to be saying?
Well, dude, I'm writing it all down. I am a freaking avid journal writer. And seriously, when I like look at my stack of journals, you know, and they keep growing, I'm just like, dude, this is going to be so cool for like somebody to look back. And I've got different journals for different things. But one of them is called like the special day journal, right? And every time I go on a special date with my wife or my kids, I put a little synopsis of the date or I stick a little flyer in of the movie we went to see. You know, that's such a great question. And it's such a hard one. And I thought about it a little bit, and honestly, I kind of feel like, I'm already started leaving it, and it's just, I want people to like me, and not for the reason that other people think, but I want them to like me because I've been a genuine person. And I've got so many friends from different experiences that I've had in my life in the last 10 to 15 years. And like, we can still connect because I'm that person that will listen or always reach out and just like randomly be like, dude, you're awesome. What's up today, man? You know what I mean? That I'm caring, that I'm loving, that I'm authentic. And that's truly who I try to be and feel I am. And that's me. I just want to be me and be a good example. You know, I mean, that's one of the things I've always wanted to do for my kids in the past few years is make sure everything I do is like, oh my gosh, like my kids are watching me. Like I need to be good. Right.
Oh, absolutely. That's a fantastic legacy. I can attest just from knowing you that yes, that legacy is already being built. And that's kind of why we did this whole podcast, is to get to the point where it's fueling your legacy, right? Your legacy isn't something that's going to be somewhere in the end. It's that to get from point A to point B, what are you using? What are the practices, habits, beliefs, identities that you're adopting to fuel that legacy? Because the car, if you want the car to end up at the destination, that car, you have to have it at the beginning, right? So that same car, that same vehicle, that same you is going to be at the same place in the future. It's just, what are you using to fuel that? And that's really what this podcast is all about. What principles, what things are we using in our life to fuel the legacy? The legacy is being built whether you like it or not, but what are you using to fuel it? And so I can attest that Luke is well on his way to building that legacy. And it would be an honor for anybody on this podcast to get in touch with him. And if nothing else, just have a great friend and have somebody in your corner who believes in you and you can always bounce ideas off of. He's just fantastic in that way. So thank you so much, Luke, for your time.
Dude, thank you, man. Seriously, I could just sit and chat with you for hours, and you know that because I think we did that a couple times already. But I appreciate you and our friendship and what you're doing, man. And everything that you just said is what you're doing. So that's awesome. And the world needs you and appreciates you. And I, for one, do as well. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Remember, for all of our wonderful listeners to comment and leave reviews on this podcast. I'm going to put in a lot more than typical show notes because I want you to be able to find his music albums. I want you to be able to find his book. I want you to be able to find his Facebook groups. I want you to be able to really interact with Luke because he's literally changing lives out there. And it's just incredible to watch and to be on a similar journey to help parents and families strengthen their relationships with each other, with their faith, and become successful in the future. On Instagram today, I actually dug up an old quote that I just love, and it's success is not happiness doesn't come from success. Success comes from being happy, something of that nature, right? You have to choose happiness before you're going to be successful, because success is more of a magnifier than it is then it's going to help you be happy. Success isn't going to help you be happy. It's going to magnify who you are. You're either a happy, kind, loving person like Luke, or you're not, right? And if you want to become like Luke, then get in touch with him because he can help you. So comment, leave a review, and we are excited to share this with you, and we'll catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.